18 minutes past 5 o'clock. Tom and Sadie with you for a political trivia Thursday. Well, the House District 9 race has heated up. An interesting race. It's probably gotten more publicity for a Eastern Carolina House race Republican primary than any race that I can remember on the Republican side. And the challenger to Brian Brown, Ashley Bleau, is with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Ashley. Good to have you with us. Welcome to News and Views.
Thank you all very much for having me.
All right. We seem to we have a mic problem. There he is. Ashley, you are new to the political scene. This is the first time you've run for public office?
I ran for county commissioner over in Craven County about 8 years ago. Don't quote me on it. It's
in your
some
past
time ago.
Well, give us a little bit of background. You told me on the phone you consider yourself a conservative, but just give us the Ashley Bleau mini biography, your family, your business, those kind of things.
Sure, no problem. I grew up in New Bern. I've lived in Eastern North Carolina my whole life, 36 years. I graduated from New Bern High School. I'm a product of the public school system. Came here to ECU, studied business and economics, and just dug my roots in deep here, and working with owning Subway sandwich shops, owning laundromats, and working through various dynamics of entrepreneurship. That's really and truly what I love. I love the idea of creating jobs.
Now, what is your business now?
Well, my wife and I own Transitions Behavioral Health Care, where we do psychiatric, psychological, substance abuse counseling, marriage and family therapy, and all sorts of dynamics there that she takes a lot of pride in. And personally, my passion is seafood. I love local seafood. I think that the people of Pitt County find a lot of pride in it. I've spent a lot of time out at the farmers markets, being able to bring local shrimp from down east and in that area down there, and enjoying educating people about the need for local seafood versus the farm-raised and the foreign seafood that gets imported. It's not to say I'm against farm-raised seafood. Local farm-raised seafood is actually pretty good.
What was your motivation for running for office, for this particular office?
Well, growing up, my dad was a county commissioner, and so I'd always been involved in politics with him, and putting up signs and going to precinct meetings and shaking hands. But long story short, I looked at the issues that our state faces right now with education and with farming. The last time farming was talked about was almost 20 years ago. And also looking at fishing practices, not only for commercial fishing, but also for recreation. And I didn't feel like there was a good way. We weren't headed in the right direction with commercial fishing, with bycatch issues and legislation that made commercial fishermen look like bad stewards, and that's the last thing as any commercial fisherman would like. But in dealing with recreational fishermen, the enjoyment has been pulled away from the fishermen themselves, and not being able to actually go out there and enjoy fishing, only being able to harvest one fish or none at all. And so,
now, you're in the seafood business. Are you also a commercial fisherman?
I am not only a commercial fisherman, but I'm a recreational fisherman as well.
Okay.
So it's almost like having boots in both boats.
Okay. So you actually go out and catch it and bring it back and sell it?
I used to. Here the past 2 years since I opened up the retail market, it's definitely put a time constraint on my ability to go down there and look at the Crystal Coast every morning.
Well, obviously, you must have an issue with Brian Brown because you're running against him in a primary. So what is your biggest issue that you have with him?
Yeah, I actually supported Brian in the last election and was an avid, outspoken individual for him. And I turned, 180 degrees because of his feelings on House Bill 983. And I felt like better well known as the Game Fish Bill. And that might have been a little bit of a catalyst that pushed me over the edge. But, I'm definitely not a one-issue candidate. Brian supports the Game Fish Bill without really understanding the full potential of what's the impact is for Eastern North Carolina. It's not just about recreational fishermen. It's not just about a net ban. It's about, vitality of an industry that has been the backbone of Eastern North Carolina, rural Eastern North Carolina. And I feel like that there's not enough awareness for that. In taking one piece of that pie away from these dealers and the fishermen, it puts an economic strain not only on the household, but as far as the fishery as well, across the board. So if you take away red drum, speckled trout, and rockfish, it puts more of a strain on clamming, crabbing, and other industries, other fisheries in the industry that, it's undue pressure. And right now, to make good stewards of our fishermen and our resource, we need to abandon the idea of the slot limit rule and go to a quota based. That way, we accomplish both things. And it seems like the recreational fishermen are wanting to get rid of the nets, and honestly, the commercial fishermen don't want to be out there and be bad stewards of their resource by throwing over fish. We're only allowed 10 fish per day. Meanwhile, if we go out there and harvest or interact with 70 fish, we're throwing 60 fish overboard dead. And so we don't want to throw those fish over. That's wasteful. So what we need to do is we need to be able to keep those fish, go to a quota, and once the quota's met, all nets are out of the water.
Did you talk to Brian about this?
I've talked to Brian numerous times on it, and he seemed open-minded at the time, but once he got up there to Raleigh, it was hard to communicate with him and follow through with things and articulate. And then the next thing I know, he was co-sponsoring one of the most controversial legislations there ever was in Eastern North Carolina.
Although this bill apparently is pretty much dead and doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere, and is not going to be brought up, from what I understand, in the short session.
Well, whether it's dead or not, it values to me, if you look somebody in the eye and say that you're going to do something or follow through with something, that means something to me. Character is everything to me. And when he looked at me and said, Ashley, I'll do everything I can, and I definitely will consult with you. And I actually had to chase him down in order to be able to get him to talk to me about this.
Let me ask you this. And by the way, our special guest today is Ashley Bleau, who is the challenger in House District 9, running against Brian Brown for the May 6th primary. The winner of that race will face Uriah Ward in November. Had set aside House Bill 983, you consider yourself a conservative. Brian considers himself a conservative. Were there any other issues that, had he been the other way on 983, that he had not sponsored that, would you have not run?
Well, there's a huge concern for me. My mom's was a teacher, and my grandmother's a retired teacher, and the way that the disrespect that the teachers are receiving right now in the General Assembly, I consider absurd. The idea of taking away master's level pay and not allowing people the just desserts to be able to provide for their families means a lot to me, and it's value. And I know as a business owner, I wouldn't be willing to invest one more minute of opportunity cost away from my families, or one dime out of my disposable income in order to go back to college to better myself, and knowing that I would not receive one dime in compensation. So the risk reward is a huge thing. So I'm different than Brian in that respect.
Although Brian was part of the raise that the teachers will be seeing in the near future, and you've got to look at the balance of paying off the debt that the previous administration incurred, along with spending more money for the teachers.
Well, I definitely look at education as not as a slush fund, and I don't think that we should be looking at that as the teachers as a disposable discretionary fund to pay off anything. Education should be at the utmost.
Well, no, but it was the raise we were talking about. We were talking about their back pay, but it was a raise.
From what I understand, that the raise was already implemented and then it was taken away.
Well, the new raise is being implemented right now. But anyway, let me ask you about a couple of other things. Go ahead, finish your statement.
The new raise, honestly, doesn't do enough, and it actually causes more turmoil inside the school system and competition between teachers, and having the first through the fifth year teachers getting paid the same as a sixth or seventh year teacher. I definitely believe in the step approach, where a seventh year teacher deserves more than a 6-year teacher. So in dealing with the raise, I think it just shows a misunderstanding of what is actually going on in the school system.
Well, I think the governor and the legislature has made it pretty clear that this is the first step, and they're going to continue to try to implement pay raises for the teachers.
From what I'm seeing, it's not really being very well received by the teachers. It is actually causing a competition amongst teachers when it should be more of a community-based. It's not really a business. It's these teachers need to be able to work together in order for the betterment of our students.
Let me ask you a little bit about the controversy surrounding the complaint filed against Brian Brown. It was filed against Todd Bennett. Is he related to your campaign at all?
Todd is a political activist, and he's part of a group of people that take a lot of pride in making sure that legislators are transparent. In doing so, they investigate a vast majority of the candidates that run. And it's not a Republican or Democrat. They're for transparency. And so as far as what Todd does, Todd's a grown man. He's much older than I am, and you'd probably have to ask him a little bit more about that than me. He does his own thing, and what I'm focused on is the issues. And
did he encourage you to run?
No, I actually contacted him for guidance, and then looking at things. He had no influence on me running at all.
Okay, and he's not a part of your campaign?
He's a friend of mine, but as far as that's about as far as it goes. I mean, he's not a paid staffer or anything of that nature.
Okay. Why was he investigating the House Bill 983? The Daily Reflector reported that he was investigating Brian's involvement with an environmental group, which Brian has told us that he connected that to House Bill 983, which is the fisheries bill that you were just talking about. Why was he investigating that? Is Todd in the commercial fishing business?
I don't believe Todd's in the commercial fishing business. Like I said, I think he's a part of a group of activists that really push for transparency. And so from that, I really don't have anything more I can add to it.
So
Well,
how do you feel today about today's revelation with some things involving you that was on the front page of the Daily Reflector, going back to 1998, some assault charges, things like that? How does that come into transparency?
It doesn't bother me a bit, and it actually, I think if I'd known that this was going to happen this way, I wouldn't have spent $900 on a half-page color ad. I mean, I wanted it to stand out, stating the exact same things. Transparency to me means everything, and I keep saying it because I think that we've lost a lot of confidence in what's going on in Raleigh and in Washington. And so with having people that are willing to step out away from their family and do the right thing, you need to be transparent. And so situations like dealing with an assault charge, absolutely. I have no problem answering any questions about the assault. My fiance at the time was physically grabbed by a gentleman that was bigger than I am, and I'm a big guy.
Now, is that your current wife?
No, I was in college, and I've always been a relationship type guy, so I'm not one that kind of plays the field. But long story short, we had gone to a gathering, and somebody had grabbed her. And in Halloween, we all know that the energy level in Greenville definitely changes. And so when it happened, the gentleman looked at me and shrugged his shoulders like he was going to come at me and asked me what I was going to do. And so I first took a step back, and I couldn't go anywhere. And then it was fight or flight. And so I've been raised with. God gave me 2 daughters. My mom gave me 2 sisters. The badge of chivalry has always been something I've been, on my shoulder and wear with pride. And I've always been raised to take, the defense of a helpless, woman. And so in doing so, I have no problem stepping up at my own risk for the betterment of, making sure somebody's taken care of.
Talk about there was, I think when you were 18 years old, there was a marijuana charge.
Sure.
And then there was was it 2006? I think there was a DWI.
Yes, sir. Well, in being an 18-year-old in college, easily influenced by people around you, it's easy to get caught up in away from your parents for the first time, and we all made decisions. Being an 18-year-old, I thought as an 18-year-old, but the biggest thing is, I had plenty of opportunity. I could have gotten this expunged off my record or something else like that. But it's part of my character. It's what made me accomplished. Now I own a DWI facility that I take a lot of pride in, and substance abuse. I do all the drug testing for DSS here in Pitt County. And dealing with the drug issue and DWIs is near and dear to my heart. And so I wanted to be able to give back to the citizens of Pitt County and the citizens across the state, and in a productive manner. And I know no better way to show, gratitude to that, to the cause, than to actually be actively a part of it. And so being diverse in so many different industries, I feel like gives me a more well-rounded approach to not only legislate, but to be a good neighbor.
Well, and I think it's important that we point out how that information came to light. It was from the Democrat
Uriah
who will be
Ward.
running against you. So, yeah.
Yeah, he
just
must
so
not
we
be
get
able to
that.
get the Daily Reflector there on campus. I don't know. We'll have to talk to them about getting them some papers over there.
Were you surprised by the story from Ginger Livingston in this morning's Daily Reflector? Did you know that was coming out?
Not at all. I was not surprised in the least. There's been a lot of turmoil been flying around, and if this is the worst that can happen, I'm glad it's happening now, because in November when I go up against Uriah, I've disarmed him. There's nothing more, and him being 21 years old or however old he is, he's got a lot of experience to gain. From this time forward, I'm sure he's got a really bright future. It just might not be in politics right now.
Now, I understand that there also you had a charge, I guess it was just a ticket or something along those lines of harvesting oysters without a permit or something.
Yeah, and that brings me back to more regulation in the seafood industry. It's taken very serious, and I take it very serious. And in looking at the oyster tags, you've got to have oyster tags not only from harvester, but from harvester to retailer, and then be able to have ability to be able to translate where everything came from. Accountability. And that way, if somebody gets sick, what bottom it is, and they can quickly get back to that and cause a closure. Well, we had brought some oysters back from one of the beds that I operate off of down there, and my cousin brought it back. But it's my responsibility as the owner, as the dealer, to make sure that the tags are on the bags in the correct manner. And so when he brought them back, the tags I filled out were still sitting in the driver's seat, but because they weren't actually sitting on the bag, that Marine Fisheries came and did their inspection. They don't come, announce.
So they do this at the shop, or they do this on the boat?
Yeah, they came up here to Greenville, and
Okay.
they do their routine, inspections, especially during oyster harvesting time, and to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing. And they confiscated 30 bushels of oysters, which equated to me losing almost $4,500 in wholesale, not to mention
Retail.
opportunity
Yeah.
cost of what I could have sold them for, but and then the fuel and everything else, then the court. And so rather than trying to deny it, I just said, you're right. I needed to make sure those tags, I've got to be the responsible one, and I'm not going to put it off on anybody else. It was my responsibility.
So is there anything else you need to tell us?
Well,
I mean, you're
It's been
getting
a
it all.
great soul
Yes.
cleansing thing for you.
That's what I say. Confession is good for the
Yeah,
soul.
we like to do that to our interviewees.
absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more that I can really add to things. I mean, it's just, I feel like, being able to talk about things makes you a better person. It's a relaxed situation, and most of all, I'm human, and I think that's what I can identify with most of the citizens in Pitt County is we're all human. We all are sinners, and it wasn't until I actually, found Jesus Christ, and I'm not trying to be too religious, but that I found my way. My beautiful wife Brooke, my two daughters, Bristol's 3 years old, and Ashby Kate's 10, and my 10-year-old's in public schools, and so they are my center of earth. They are what matters to me, and so being able to stand up for what's right, I want to be a leader for them as well.
Let's get back to the hot topic issues. If you get up to if you get to the general election and you win the general election, you get up to Raleigh come next January. Give us the three highest priorities that you would like to see dealt with if Ashley Bleau had his way in Raleigh.
Without a doubt, education is my top priority. Being able to restore morale in the classroom, not only for the teachers, but for the students. I see in my 10-year-old, issues of being ahead of the class. Meanwhile, not being, held, being pushed like everybody else. And so I see morale being a huge issue, and getting teachers' pay back to where it needs to be, and somewhere in the neighborhood of no less than the national average is where I would like to see it. And I think that the voucher system right now is flawed. And so in dealing with vouchers, I think we need to repeal that approach and look at more of a credit approach rather than a cash approach, and looking at being able to give somebody that makes less than $30,000, $4,200 for their child to go to school in a private school. They don't have the discretionary funds to add to it in order to be able to send them. So I think that it creates a tension with teachers, and looking at that. Number two, I would say farming. Farming is huge. My dad was a hog farmer, so I spent many days out there changing the oil on a Massey Ferguson 135 and making sure solid sets were working. And agriculture creates principles and family values, and most of all, it creates that sense of accomplishment. You put the seed in the ground, you nurture that seed to a plant, and from a plant you bring it to harvest, and then you bring it to market. So we need to get people back to work. And third, working on legislation to be able to make productive, citizens and workers out of the commercial fishing sector, and being able to promote the recreational aspect. Looking at a 73-inch rule was something that I came up with. And
explain what the 73-inch rule is to us and our listeners. I have no idea what the 73-inch rule is.
That's how I feel when you talk about golf.
Well, in looking at recreational fishing, there's such thing called a slot limit, which is 18 inches to 28 inches, that they're only allowed to harvest fish in that range. Meanwhile, the likelihood of catching something in that range is about like winning the lottery. It's a little bit better odds, but nonetheless, it doesn't give the reward to the fishermen that they so sorely need, in spending money for fuel, licensing fees, and going out there and being able to fight the hope that the weather's nice. So in 73 inches, most people like to go out there and catch those big drum out there off of Oriental or in the Pamlico Sound, and they work those on light tackle during the heat of the summer. Dissolved oxygen levels are low, and the mortality rate on these fish, once they're caught, they pull them out, take pictures of them, then release them. A lot of them are showing up dead. And so rather than just release them, we need to be able to give the fishermen the ability to be able to harvest those and utilize those. And if we're going to really look at the economic value, which is what the Game Fish Bill is trying to portray, it's not stock assessments or stock levels, but economics. That's all it's about. We need to set ourselves apart from everywhere else instead of following everybody's lead. Yeah. And by doing that, that'll entice other fishermen to come in and enjoy our waters. The sport fish, to enjoy, if they're able to harvest here where they're not able to harvest somewhere else, they're going to come here. So if we're here all about economics, then we should be for getting rid of the slot limit and going to a 73-inch rule.
Actually, we're out of time. We do thank you for coming in. We thank you for being open over these issues that have been come out in the news today. And I'm sure there'll be some. I'm sure this is not the last we'll hear about this race between now and May the 6th. Hopefully, it'll be more issues than controversy. But what is your website address if folks want to learn more about you?
Bleau, my last name, BLEAU 4 FORNC house.com. Right. And I'm also on Facebook. Just check us out there, too.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for running. I say it to every candidate. It's a lot of work. You put yourself out there. Obviously, like it or not, you become very transparent, and your past is suddenly on the front page of the paper, literally. Yeah. So we do appreciate your willingness to run, and thanks, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for the pleasure of being here.
All right, Eastern Carolina News and Views.